this computer. So, shalom, shalom, and glad that everybody is here. And today, I know we talked last week about examining this particular train of thought called the path to humility. And there's probably a bit of content that we'll go through. I think I may change the order around just a little bit. I may, but I may just plow through what we have laid out. But in this discussion, the path to or the path of humility, really want to explore the ideal, the concepts, the conversations around what it means to be humble. And again, as we always talk, or I talk about, this is definitely a participatory learning environment. So although I enjoy doing some talking, there is not a necessity for me to do all the talking. Um, I would probably also add that it is a lot of content to go through in general on being humble and humility. And I would also say that uh, this particular subject can be studied over and over again, uh, and also practiced because there's a lot to glean from it. So as I mentioned probably last week when we were examining the subject of discussion, there is no one time sit down and you get it, right? Like it just kind of doesn't work like that with different Bible topics in general. And then, although this is probably at some level more simplistic of a topic, there are still a bunch of people who won't grasp it. So just to introduce myself, and some of this is for, whoever views this online and not necessarily for those who are here, but I go by Elder Moses, or some people use Akeem Moshe, which is Hebrew for Elder Moses. And I always want to give thanks to the elders and the brothers that I sat under to learn on this journey, because it took a lot sitting under, sitting around, sitting with, discussions, late nights, early mornings, spending the night, outreach, street walking, passing out flyers, etc. So elders like Hank, Jehoiakim, Yosef, um, Tizdaka, brothers that I spent time with, and whether in New York or DC or uh, in Georgia or wherever I found myself learning, and always definitely want to give deference to them for the time and labor that they put in, not just with me, but in concert. Like some of them were true elders, and then etc. So a little bit about Debar, and I won't wax too poetic about that for whoever's getting an opportunity to view the video. But Debar is a Hebraic rooted fellowship, which means we use the Hebrew rooted principles, Torah, and information of the Old Testament and the prophets, as well as the New Testament. But it's all, as we take it, rooted in the Old Testament. The word debar is the Hebrew word for the word word. It is the word for the word things, or like words are things, like a car is a word and a car is a thing. And it is also the word for business or activity. So the word is manifested in some type of tangible activity. And the last thing I'll say about that are our four kind of guiding kind of pillars: are agriculture, biblical culture, community culture, and family culture. So everything we do has those four hinges or pillars on it. What are we going to do today? So what we are going to do today is an introduction to framing. I just did some of that. We'll do opening psalms of prayer. I'll still do the breakout group. I think it's a lot more robust when more people join, so I may move that around just a little bit, because I like for a few more people to be in there. But I may just take a poll and see what you all say. And then the lecture, that may be under 60 minutes, it may be right at 60 minutes, and then we'll do questions and then official closeout. So all in all, about 75, or sorry, about 90 minutes or so um, of the engagement and then questions and etc. Any thoughts about that or anything I said before we kind of get started here? Anybody, anybody? Well, hallelujah. Well, Brother Jordan, is it still 84 down there?
It's cooling off now that the sun's going down, but it's around 80,
No, okay.
79.
You know, that can provoke a brother to jealousy, just a tad. So uh, in terms of our objectives, I always like to talk about the objectives, like as I'm constructing a particular set of thoughts or a particular study, what am I trying to express when I'm putting this together, right? Like what's on my mind? And on my mind is a few different things. One is to define and explain humility and define the value of it. The second is to explore the paths to humility. And while again, there are quite a few directions this could go, I want to talk about a few of the paths to humility, and there are stops along that path. And we'll look at it like we're taking a trip and we're trying to get to humility. But here are some things that we should know about humility along with that process. And again, as I mentioned before, there's a lot that'll be left out of the discussion because I generally try to cap what I'm doing at a certain time constraint. I generally won't spend, uh, I generally won't go like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, some of the teachers I had the honor to sit under, like they may start at one and end at five, and it'd be like 90 scriptures. And I'm like, okay, we get it. Like we get the point. But I mean, that's their particular proclivity. And it helped discipline me. And then I think the more I began to teach, like, yeah, I'm about to stop this at about 75 minutes. I think people get it by then. And anything you don't get, take notes and then use what you learn to add on to what we cover. So explore the path to humility and the stops on the way. And then the third is to identify the obstacles to humility, such as pride, self-sufficiency, and learn practical strategies to cultivate a humble heart. Uh, and as you see on the screen, you have a foot washing taking place, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Things to know, just really quickly. I'll put the link in the chat as definitely when more people join in. Definitely feel free to join the WhatsApp group. I do not send a lot of messages. It's also not a um, platform where um, a lot of people um, are posting because I think it's like, look, hey, we're meeting. Here's a reminder. I don't even like being in groups where it's 1,000 messages every few minutes. A lot. It not only clogs up your phone, but it's a lot of things to do. If you also have the opportunity, please visit. We just developed about a month or so ago a new YouTube page. It's at Hebrew Rooted. Currently, there are about 4 or 5 videos on there. Um, so please join, watch a video. I know the teaching from last week that we talked about is on there, but it's at Hebrew Rooted and that's on YouTube. In terms of the study, I encourage you to invite who you will. It is a free buffet. It's all you can eat. So as you feel compelled that folks aren't going to be a distraction to what we're doing, just feel free to invite them. To the extent possible, please keep your camera on. I mean, sometimes it's just going through content, but I mean, sometimes I'm talking and I'm like, if I'm talking to a black screen, that's one thing. But if I'm saying something, it's like, oh, I get a facial expression. It's like, okay, let me dive in deeper on that. And then, per request of others, this is being recorded on Zoom, and it's being posted on YouTube. So if for that reason you're like, oh, my hair not done, or I don't feel comfortable, or whatever, being on YouTube, then you can keep your camera off and change your name to like maybe just your first name, whatever have you. Oh, alrighty. Norms, we talk about step up, step back, definitely participate. We kind of went over to some of this last week. You may hear various names and titles used for God. I think we're all clear that we're talking about the creator of the universe. If somebody's like, oh, I don't use this word or that word, don't feel pressure to. At some point, probably in this series, which is a 12-week series, this is week 2 of that 12-week series. At some point, we're going to look at And I think this is in this particular session, probably like week 9 or 10. We're going to look at words and names in more depth. And I think when I finish with it, I think you'll get a summation of why I draw the conclusions I draw. And again, you don't have to believe them, but you'll get an understanding. If you hear things that you are familiar with, definitely feel free to ask questions. Different people have different understandings, so I'm not here to cast aspersions on people's understanding. And there's no special version of the Bible that we are using. So if you are like, I'm a Young's literal translation only person or sacred name version, kind of doesn't really make me a huge difference. Now, if you lose like the New World Translation or something like that, I might be like, let's read that in another version. Um, then that'd be that. Two other things, and I'll open up to see if you have any thoughts or questions. The views and concepts expressed in this study are that of Zaki Moshe and my takeaway from studying scripture. Because this is also participatory learning, you'll be able to express some of your thoughts also. You are not required to have these same views. Your questions and your opposition are both welcome. So we covered a particular subject last week, and again, your questions and opposition is welcome because you're like, I do not see it that way. Let's talk about it, right? Any thoughts or questions on anything that I shared so far? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, well. Oh, and if I could get a volunteer to open us up with prayer. Does anybody want to open us up with prayer? Por favor.
I can pray.
Well, I'll take that.
Getting ready to pray now. Most High Yah, we come before you. We thank you for your love, your kindness, and your generosity in bringing us to the end of this week, bringing us to the end of this dispensation. We ask that as we come forth and as we study and as we seek you, that we would find you, as we knock, that the door would be opened unto us. We pray that you would be in our midst. You said wherever two or three are gathered there, you would be in the midst. So we just welcome you into the midst, and we ask you to lead us and guide us through this study so we may understand and we may walk away better than we came in. In Yahushua HaMashiach.
Hallelujah.
Oh yeah.
Well, all right. So, quick review. A quick review. And anybody can share comments on this. Last week, we looked at the trees in the garden. And we said a couple of things about the trees in the garden. We looked at three of the basic constructs of it. There's a lot more to cover again. Like I said, you can't squeeze so much within such little time. But we looked at the trees in the garden and we wanted to ask the question, what is the tree of knowledge of good and evil and what do we know about it? So we discussed some of that. I laid out some of the framework of what I understand after really, really analyzing this for a long time and using a lot of biblical concepts and just kind of plainly what it says to talk about the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things like, oh, it's Satan, and the tree of life is such and such, and then the light in Genesis is such and such. And I hear all this stuff, and I'm like, well, book, chapter, verse, and context, please. Like that's just the way that I have been trained, and that is the way that I teach. Book, chapter, verse, context. And I just got a call from Maury Will a few moments ago, and he uses this term and says, "Yeah, I need an address for that, right? Because you can pull up to the right place when you got the address, right? You can't do so when not." So we talked about the trees of knowledge of good and evil, and we talked about other trees in the garden. Does anybody have any thoughts about what we discussed last week? Guess I could take that as a no. Jordan, yes, sir.
I'll just say real quick. I never really thought of what you had presented beforehand, but after listening to the message again, just once again, just seeing the three different points that you had made, the government being seen as also the trees and trees as people, and then the trees as the priests in the nation of Israel. I thought those are very interesting points, and I'll have to continue to do my research, but it was just really good nuggets of wisdom. And as always, I feel like there's more to it. I kind of wonder what the real true depth of what we covered is, but for for my first time hearing what you presented, it was very interesting.
Hallelujah. Um, yeah, it's when you start looking at the Hebrew language, the word is etz for trees, and it's interesting that if you put certain letters on etz, then it means something related to a tree. It's really, really, really interesting. So, I mean, but we didn't go that far into it. I laid a little bit of the framework out. We also talked about the difference between chemistry and biology, and I used some other allegories or references. These are branches of science, and then there's branches of math, and all of this branch is connected to some tree. And I'm arguing from the standpoint that all of these trees is in the garden. And part of there was maple trees, and part of it was, pine trees, and some of it was just information. And that information was accessible, and then people used, like any information, you can use it for good or evil. So I think we officially have enough people to do breakout groups. And I think that we will do this for about 15 or 20 minutes. And I'll try to get, let's see, I think we can basically squeeze 3 breakout groups. It should work out. Um, or close to it. So in the breakout groups, and I'll post this out, but I want us to look at in the conversation, we're talking about the path to humility and these framing questions, which the framing question is like to set our discussion, direction, and exploration. And the particular framing questions that we want to look at is one is to describe a time when it was difficult for you to be humble and what you did to overcome that difficulty. So I'll kind of separate the questions by groups. So group one will answer this question. Um, Describe a time when it was difficult to be humble and what you did to overcome that difficulty. And I'll post these in the groups when I do the broadcast. The second is define humility or define humble, and what are the obstacles to being humble? Like, what is when you think about humility, like, oh, I just want to be this pious, let me just pray all the time, and whatever that is, to be humble. What are the obstacles to being that? And maybe, and yeah, maybe I'll just do 2 groups. I mean, I'll do 2 groups, and then we'll throw this one in there, and I'll put this in there too. What is false humility, and how do you know when someone is really humble? Because this is ideal of being humble or like humility, and then like when do you know when how do you know when somebody's really humble? So most of us would say like the newly elected president probably is not humble, right? But then there are other people who you're like, oh man, like the Dalai Lama, who you'd be like, oh man, he's just really humble. He's always just okay. So what is false humility, and how do you know when someone is really humble? So those are the 3 questions. I will definitely take those and post them. But what I'll do is I'll split to 2 breakout groups. Let me see what happens if I do 3. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I'll do 2. Uh, a little more robust discussion. I'll do. Oh, Jordan, go ahead. Sorry, you had your hand raised.
Do we need to have a spokesperson for each group when we come back, or we
Yeah,
just
that would be helpful.
popcorn?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Definitely.
Okay.
That would be helpful to have a spokesperson for each group. And we'll spend about, um, give or take about 20 minutes or so and answer those questions. Maybe a little less than 20 minutes, but just bear with it. Sheesh. All right. ignore these rooms because I'm gonna have to like close the rooms and start over now. Jeez. All right, one more time. All right, so it's going to break you out into groups here. Add a room, sign. All right, so it should open all rooms and then I'll post the messages. I'll post the messages and the questions in the room, so you'll be able to see those. So you should just be able to click join as it pops up. Boom, boom, boom. Are you able to join, Brandon? Oh, geez.
So is this also a question?
Repeat that for me.
I thought I just saw another question populate at the top.
Oh, I don't see any of it, so.
Oh, did you get any of them?
I
All
saw
right.
the first one.
I guess we'll go, what is false humility and how do you know when someone is really humble? Um,
So I think humility is having a accurate sense of your worth.
Okay. And and um exalt the Most High.
Y'all good with the question?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I'm sorry.
And,
Yeah. You can go.
and what say ye, Tiana?
Yeah,
What
I definitely agree, with everything that Brother Jalen was saying. It's kind of the same experience here where it's like maybe I know with me, just being like real career oriented, you know, it has gotten me to a point where I have thought of myself more than I ought. Um, and this has led me to, in a sense, not think I need God, whether that was for a time or a season, because of financial gain or whatever, just from my career and, status from my career and stuff like that. Um, so I think definitely a time where, I had to humble myself was when I actually lost my job. I lost my job. Um, and it took a huge blow to me, of course, like financially and even to my confidence. And it just made me kind of basically, I believe it's just God grabbing my attention, kind of, and just humbling me, you know, and showing me that without Him, I'm nothing. Like it doesn't matter what achievement that I achieve or what career status that I achieve or anything in my personal life or any aspect really. Um, so yeah.
See, from my perspective, in
To think lowly of oneself. Is that what
Mhm.
you stated, Jordan? Just wanted to make sure now that I'm taking notes.
Yeah, I would say so you can think lowly of yourself, but also uh I'm thinking now like in sports. I don't know if you
Mhm.
guys play sports a whole lot, but when there's a better athlete or a better team and a team who thinks that they were pretty good, they get beat pretty handedly.
Mhm.
Oftentimes what's said is that team got humbled. So that's
Mhm.
when I say thinking, I guess lower of yourself, you're not thinking like you are better than others. Um,
Not cocky.
yeah, you're not thinking like you're not haughty, you're not super full, full of pride. You're, you're level-headed. You know that you
Okay.
can always be better, but you could always be worse. But you're at
Okay.
where you're at, you're right where you're at.
Okay. I have for you to think lowly of them of self, because I'm putting that as the second portion of the question. How do you know when someone is truly humble? They think lowly of themselves, are not full of pride, and are level-headed.
Mm.
I'll add,
And they come to you meekness. So,
this. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
mhm.
Okay. Philippians 2, 1 through 9 is a good passage to think about humility. But I'm going to share this definition. This is not my definition. I found it from this site called Radical Mentoring. But it says the Hebrew word anava is what we translate as humility, but the literal definition of anava is to occupy your, it says God given, but Yahuwah given space in the world, to not overestimate yourself or your abilities, but to not underestimate them either. And so we've been put here to do the will of the Father.
Mhm.
Philippians 2 kind of lines that up with Yahusha and how he showed up, because you go low, because you know that's what the Father would have us do. And boasting should be on what the Father is doing through us through our obedience. And to me, that humility is making sure we're putting Him first, and in putting Him first, we put others before ourselves. We're not to be respecters of people, but if we see somebody with a need, we should seek to meet their need.
Mhm.
When Yahusha came, he was basically emptied out that divine nature so he could be that servant style, and we're to align to that typology. So now I was looking at Philippians and then paralleling it to this kind of definition I found, but it was a unique way to say you still have things that you can do, and you should be using what the Most High put in you, but you should not overestimate your capabilities. You know, you got to understand
Mhm.
where that comes from. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at humility.
I think that's important because we see a lot of people underestimating themselves and they're thinking, oh, I'm being humble, you know. Yeah, I'm like, no, if you're the person for the job, step up and get out of your comfort zone and do that job. That's a really good point. So I put
Mhm.
for yours Philippians 2:19. I'm going to put that verse in there, but also enough humility to occupy your God-given space in the world, to not over or underestimate their capabilities.
our people tend to be more aggressive and say, no, you're going to back it up, and there's a conflict in culture. We have to find that point of we have to humble ourselves and oftentimes take a lot of verbal abuse and not physically respond to it. So and so for me, humility again is changing your plans. And the reason why it's important is because your plans are something, again, that you're married to, you are intimately connected with, and it costs you everything within you to make that change for Abba Yah's plans, you know. What tells you to and it's easy enough for us to love Yahuwah with all our strength, all our mind, all of our substance, but then to love your neighbor as you love yourself. When you stop and think about how forgiving you are to yourself, do you love your neighbor like that? That reality, you'll find fault in what they did and be a lot less forgiving towards it than you are yourself. But how different are you from them that you would give yourself that leeway, but not them? That type of deal. So something that costs you, if it doesn't cost you, you're really not, again, from my perspective, you're really not exercising humility because there's nothing vested. Everything that you give Yahuwah costs you something for the rationale of you dying to self for Yahuwah for the purpose of being a sweet smelling savor to him. So I guess we're talking about the same things, just that old saying, same church, different pew, as it were. And I've been where what you experienced, Tiana, and can definitely empathize with it for sure.
Hallelujah. Yeah, I think that's I think you bring out a great point, Foshi, because I think as well as like, we talked about lowering yourself and kind of afflicting yourself with humility, but like the action of that is like what you were kind of alluding to is killing your desires, right? So when it comes to like the things that, because that's really what shows, you know, how much you're really obedient, how much do you really love the Most High is when, your desires are coming into play versus what the Most High has instructed us to do, right? So being able to push down your desires and lift up what the Most High wants for us to do, is like the action behind humility for
Yeah.
sure. So I agree with that 100%.
You said that better than me. I'm glad we got this recording so I can I can rehearse it and then practice that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
hallelujah.
definitely agree with everything that's being said. And I guess you don't think about it like that at times, definitely dealing with humility. Um, and I guess just in general, just kind of the testing of your faith is literally like that. You're sacrificing something. Um, that you may not even understand, but just in the most, you know, he sees all, he knows all. He created you, right? He created us, and it's not the other way around. So
And
Naeem, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Were you able to go into a breakout room?
No, I disconnected and I rejoined.
Oh, okay. You want me to, I can send you back in the one. You want me to?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's sent you in one. You just uh, have to accept the invite or whatever. People coming back in about 2 more minutes anyway. 22 more seconds. So if you are watching this video, we are talking about being humble and humility, the path to being humble. We'll start getting into a few texts after the breakout group. After a few words from we don't have any sponsors, so. And yeah, we are back. 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 Alrighty. So we are back. Looks like you had some words, and if you feel like it was cut short, then my bad, because my wife is not well today. She caught a head cold, and so she's laying down, and she would normally be helping keep time. But can we get some feedback? What were the discussions in groups, and what were your takeaways?
I can say for our group, we talked about a lot of different things. Just we talked about humility being kind of like the word literally means, if you look at it in the Hebrew, it literally means to lower yourself or almost to afflict yourself. So we kind of talked about that. We talked about, humility being um, like a form of sacrifice, and how, as well as, being able to suppress your own desires, and exalt the desires of the Most High. And then we also talked about um, the coach, he brought out that, if you don't feel like you're losing something, or if you don't feel like you're truly sacrificing something, then how much does it really mean to you? So um, and then we kind of shared and gave some examples of some situations that we've been through where we had to practice humility, or try to practice humility. So those were some of the key points that we talked about in our group.
Good stuff. I'll show you your own mute. You're
Oh
okay.
no,
There
you
you
can go ahead, Jordan.
go. Okay. Uh, I'll try to do the best I can for tonight. We had a lot of information that went through in our group. Call it the brain trust. But to the first question was how do we know when someone is truly humble? They kind of, they put their needs aside to take care of the needs of others. They have an accurate sense of their worth, contribution, strength, weaknesses, and they operate accordingly, adjusting to new realities. They think lowly of themselves and are not full of pride, and they're level-headed and have a lot of meekness. A verse that was mentioned was Philippians. I hope I'm getting that right, Brandon. I think it was Philippians 2, verses 1 through 9. Um, we didn't go through the whole chat, but basically it mentioned a lot about humility and what humility is, and to kind of not uh, think too highly of yourself, but also to not think too lowly of yourself. Um, and then I think what is false humility? Pretend to be humble while still centering yourself. You got humble bragging. That was one of the things I put in there. And a little context with that is I live, or not where I live, but where I work at. I work in an affluent area, and many of the times at the high school, the kids they'll kind of talk about their status, or their parents' monetary status, and just kind of talk to their kids about like we have this, but not to really brag, and they'll say stuff like that. But in reality, it takes a lot of resources, time, energy to be able to acquire a yacht or a mansion or things that people work very hard for and maybe never attain. And so it's just a false sense of, I guess, reality that they may live in at times. But I don't know if that made the most sense. Tonight's not one of my best nights, but we discussed a lot in our group just about what reality or what humbleness is, what we think it is. It's just, I think at the end of the day, we're kind of looking at it as just not maybe thinking too highly of yourself. And I yield.
Oh, yeah. Anybody have anything else to add on that? Well, I thank you for sharing. I popped into a couple of the groups and heard a few things that were said, and I think that yeah, there's a lot to talk about in terms of humility. So as we talk about and discuss this path to humility, I want to jump into some of the text, and then um, some of it I'll truncate just because time, etc. But let me put an actual timer on here. And what we'll start out doing is on the path to humility, we're going to make a couple stops. And then the first stop that we are going to make is the supremacy of our majestic creator. We're going to look at the supremacy of our majestic creator. And this is a very, very important stop. And I think that if we didn't make any other stops, this is probably the most important stop to make for a couple of different reasons. First reason being, we didn't make any universes. None at all. None at all. None. We make no universes, okay? And I'll just go through some slides and we'll go back to the text. All right. Where were you when the Almighty designed and created a hawk? I wasn't even thought of. I mean, or I was thought of and I was still like 12 millenniums away from happening or something like that, right? And then when we think about an ocean and clouds and water, for this divine, majestic, eternal being to sit down, and I don't even know if it thinks, like, I'm using that word it, like that being, I don't know if it thinks, I don't know what it does, but it thought about, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna make something called water, and it's gonna cover 75% of the ocean, and the people's body is gonna have 75% of water in it. And scientists to this day have only discovered 5% of what's in the ocean. 5%. I mean, there are creatures that glow in the dark and can electrocute you in water. And this entity sat down and thought about that and then made it. And then had all of these beings and creatures come out of water and start flying through the heavens. Then something like a turtle. Like it can be on land and be underwater, and it can swim and it can snap and bite your finger off, one type of turtles. Then it's another turtle that's almost as big as a human body. Then it's another turtle that it has this hard shell that has a signature like a fingerprint, because reportedly no two turtles have the same indentations on their shell. And this thing can swim and eat stuff. And what type of entity sat down and thought about this? And then you think about the moon. Like, all right, I'm gonna make this thing that glow in the dark. And then it's gonna be small at first, and then it's gonna grow. And then the people listen to me, I'm gonna tell them meet at these times according to this schedule. But this entity sat down and gave thought to this thing, and then turned around and made something like a giraffe. Now, a giraffe don't look like a turtle, it don't look like the ocean, and it don't look like an elephant. They even have different skins and they're different heights and different colors, and each one has eyes, but both, as far as I understand, are vegetarians. This thing is probably like 6,000 pounds, and all it does is eat grass. But something sat down, some entity or being sat down and thought about this and designed it and put it on a planet, and it recreates itself every time. And then we have a whale or a killer shark, etc., right? So when we think about the first stop on our tour, it is the majesty of our creator. So if somebody can grab Genesis, well, I'll quote it and then we can move on. Somebody can grab Psalms 115 and verse 3. But it says, in the beginning, like Elohim created the heaven and the earth. And I remember somebody telling me, so what's the difference between created and made, right? Well, he created the heaven and the earth and all that is therein. And nothing exists that he did not create. And that's a heck of an imagination. Now, if I were your supreme being, All y'all would look like stick figures. Y'all wouldn't have lungs because my imagination wouldn't have stretched that far. Y'all wouldn't have been kissing people because I wouldn't have made you with no lips. Your ear probably wouldn't be able to distinguish this from a helicopter from a dog barking. I wouldn't have thought of that. So thankfully, people that fit me like humans didn't go design other humans, right? Now that they have a template, people kind of recreating what a man is and what a woman is, and they're trying to do all this nonsense. But in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and earth. And what that testifies to is the supremacy of his ability, this majestic creator. Can somebody grab Psalms 115 and verse 3, if you would? Psalms 115 and verse 3.
Yeah, I have it.
Yes.
But our Elohim is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased.
So he's in the heaven, and what did he do? He did whatever
Whatsoever
he
he
wanted.
pleased.
He literally whatever he wanted to do, he did. And who was going to stop him? Because he in the heavens. And as much as all of these, like, they have machines and weapons of war that supposedly can blow up the planet. Well, that don't mean it can blow up the galaxies and everything everywhere he is. It doesn't mean that. So he's in the heavens and he's far away from where we are. And his imagination is completely majestic, completely majestic. So let's look at Daniel chapter 4 and verse 34 and 35, right? And this is the truncated version of the supremacy of our majestic creator, right? So I can spend the next 2 millennia trying to break down all that he created because he made so and created so many different aspects of things. Like we could just talk about the fingerprint for a decade, and we could talk about the fact that each snowflake is different. And then that has nothing to do with the kidneys in your body separate blood from urine through this device called, I think it's the Gamaliel filtrate, right? I wouldn't have thought of that, just to be honest. I'm like, no, you ain't getting that out of me. Y'all have been walking around with stick figures, and I might have not even give you legs because I don't, just my imagination didn't stretch that far, right? But thankfully, we have a creator that thought of that. Daniel chapter 4, verse 34 and 35.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Daniel chapter 4, verse 34. It says, and at the end of days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to the heavens, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and him great, and made him great, and made him great who lives forever, whose rule is an everlasting rule, and his reign is from generation to generation.
So
And
his
all that, oh, go
His
ahead.
rule is an everlasting rule, and his like everlasting. That means it never stops, and his reign is from generation to generation. Keep going.
Yep. And all the inhabitants of the earth are of no account. And he does not, and he does as he wishes with the host of the heavens and among the inhabitants of the earth. And there is none to strike against his hand or to say to him, what have you done?
Yeah, he's not sitting down taking counsel with nobody on heaven or on earth, like they can prevent him from doing a thing. And there's some instances where one can call him into question, and it looks like the divine being will reason with his creation and say, no, that's a good idea. Like, yeah, let's do that, right? And that's the connection that the text talks about happening. But he do whatever he want, right? So he created, and this is just a small sample, like these elephants and these whales and these killer sharks, and this thing's how in the heck do this like 3-ton creature float through water? How? How? Like, and again, somebody could explain the scientific view, like, oh, no, yeah, no, all you gotta do is put fins, and you still can't explain how this thing float in the middle of the water and recreate itself and have babies and feed the babies and the babies grow up, and like nobody can explain that stuff. That is beyond the realm of our conception. In all reality, it's beyond the realm of our conception. And if you can explain one part of his creation, I guarantee you can't explain a walrus. and a penguin and an ox and a strawberry. We just don't have that ability. All right. So stop one. We covered stop one on our way to the path to humility. And again, I can wax poetic about stop one. So we're looking at the path to humility. Stop one was our majestic creator. Stop two on our path to humility. Who is this?
It's an earthworm.
Yeah, but who is it? Anybody know who this is? Not really a trick question, but who is
I
this?
would say us, but I don't think that we're that advanced in comparative to the majestic one.
Yeah, well, you've done a good job. This is you. This is you. This is everybody online. You a worm. You're absolutely nothing. Okay? Compared to your almighty being, you are nothing. So when we look at this path to humility, this is what we're examining. The first one we started to look at is what? The supremacy of our majestic creator. The second stop on the path to humility is this is you. You are a worm. And when you think about one day you got so mad at somebody, or one day you think you didn't deserve this to happen to you, or one day you thought you were so high and mighty, this is who you are. And because I like receipts and addresses and book, chapter, verse, and context, let's take a look at you are nothing. Now, that's also diametrically opposed to the other Bible texts that say, what is man that you mindful of him? So we're not looking at that angle per se today. But let's look at Isaiah chapter 40. Isaiah chapter 40, and we'll look at verse 15. So the second stop on our path to humility, like if we're going to explore being humble and having humility, the second stop on that tour is you nothing. You are nothing. You should never feel like, you know, this pomp and this arrogance, and you're nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, that don't mean that you shouldn't go to work and you should, you know, not pay your bills and this and third. I mean, just keep what I'm saying in context. But Isaiah chapter 40, and if somebody can pick it up at verse 15, Isaiah 40 and verse 15.
I'll take it.
Yes, sir.
Verse 15. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket.
Okay,
And
so all nations, he's saying, is like a drop in a bucket. A drop in a bucket. Like, go get yourself a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket. You can go get a 50-gallon bucket if you want. Go get a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, and then let's just drop one raindrop in there. And that's all nations compared to the Creator. You're nothing. When he look at the nations, it's like, I cannot believe this pompous nation that went over and start robbing this other nation and then gonna beat themselves on the chest about it. They are dropping a bucket to me. And if I feel a way about that, which he does, what I'm gonna do to them? Just like we read last week when we talked about the trees in the garden, he told Pharaoh he was a whale and he gonna put his hooks and net in him and drag him on the water. And what would happen if a whale was on the, not drag him out the water, but drag him to the shore? What would happen if a whale hit the shore
it
and
won't
couldn't
survive.
find his way back? And he
Die.
said, all the birds of the field, and this is what happened when the Egypt fell. Every nation came and got a piece of their ruins. Like, oh man, let's go down and okay. So that was verse 15. Let's read verse 16.
Okay. And Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beasts thereof sufficient for a burnt offering.
No, Lebanon they're talking about the trees in Lebanon. So apparently, the way the scriptures articulated, Lebanon has a lot of gorgeous trees. And you could use all the trees in Lebanon and it wouldn't mean nothing to him. All right, verse 17.
All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and vanity.
Yeah, in
Verse
another text, it may something like spittle, or other verses or versions or other texts with that you can company to that. All nations before him are like worms and spit. That's it. That's all you get. You worms and spit. That's all you are, right?
My
Uh,
mine says, they are reckoned to him as less than a speck and emptiness.
Yeah, like you a period on with a pencil on the end of like 10,000 books. Like you just all nations is just like that little, let me erase them and get rid of them. So when you think about the second stop on the tour, we looked at the supremacy of our creator. If you want to pursue being humble, keep in mind, you never want to lift yourself up because you definitely didn't create no walrus. And you definitely didn't create this thing called hair that just keep growing. And if you cut it for the most part, it'll grow again. You cut it, it'll grow again. You ain't do that. And I guarantee you, everybody here, this does not sound like a dog barking. What type of entity created something in your eardrum that can distinguish sound? Okay, you go from there in the second stop on the tour, man. We just worms. We nothing. Isaiah chapter 41 and verse 8. And it's interesting, we won't read through the book of Job, but when Job tried to justify himself, at the end of the day, we actually will look at Job, but at the end of the day, man, man, there's a Bible text that say that he exacts upon us less than our iniquity deserve. Why shouldn't we be going through this? Oh, yes, you should. You done did some foul stuff. You get whatever I give you. And suck it up, buttercup. I mean, and the Most High love you at the same time. Because he gave you his Sabbath day and his feast days and his loving kindness, and he's caused the sun to shine on the just and unjust. Isaiah chapter 41 and verse 8.
All right.
I'll take it.
Yes, sir.
But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend.
Oh, man, you my friend. I noticed this. Y'all his friend. Okay, keep going.
You whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest regions, and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not cast you away. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. Verse 11, behold, all those who were incensed against you shall be ashamed and disgraced. They shall be as nothing, and those who strive with you shall perish.
Mm-hmm.
You shall seek them and not find them. Those who contended with you, those who war against you shall be as nothing, as a non-existent thing.
So this is the Almighty telling his beloved nation of Israel that he struck an agreement with Abraham, who he loved, too. Abraham just dust and dirt too, but he struck an agreement with Abraham and he loved Abraham. And he's given him all these beautiful promises and things and this, that, and the third. And it's like, nobody gonna be able to fight against you, this, that, and the third. Continue down to verse 13.
All right. Verse 12, you shall seek them and not find them, those who continue with you. Okay, verse 13, for I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, fear not, I will help you.
Okay, verse 14.
Fear not, you worm, Jacob, you men of Israel. I will help you, says the Lord, and your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel.
There's this movie, now I'm not encouraging you to watch the movie, but it's this movie about martial arts and revenge and this, that, and the third. And the woman was being trained by this particular sensei, and she says to him, after the woman gets real angry at him, and she wants to harm him. And he looks at her and laughs and strokes his chin like this. And he says, you versus me is like a worm versus an eagle. And notice here that he's calling Abraham or Jacob or Israel, the men of Israel, fear not, you worm, you defenseless, ground digging piece of nothingness. So when we think about humility, part of what we think about, man, we not nobody. And sometimes you see these different groups and they beating themselves on the chest. We Israelites. Listen, man, you a worm. That's the proper context. You're not better than anybody. You're not the greatest. No, you're a worm. And if you made 600,000 last year or 600 million, you're still dirt. And guess what? Just like that, he could stop your lungs from working. And that little 600,000 or 600 million won't do nothing for you because you're a worm. That's the context. Psalms chapter 22 and verse 4. Psalms 22 and verse 4. So the second stop on our path to humility. One thing that we always want to keep in mind of when we get some great accomplishment or we accomplish some great thing or some great victory, we always want to do as people say, all praise to the Most High. All praise to the Most High. Psalms 22 verses 4 through 6.
Got it. Um, Psalms 22 and 4 says, Our father trusted in you. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried to you and you were delivered. They trusted in you and were not ashamed. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people.
We said, I'm a what? I'm a worm. So we showed this piece right here, and other folks, you were correct. Who is this? This is us, just a worm. We just
Mm.
lowly. And I remember, we keep a certain part of the festival, and Yeshua was washing people's feet, so we wash people's feet. And I remember somebody, man, I ain't washing nobody's feet. Why wouldn't you wash somebody's feet if you're just a worm and you dirt? I ain't touching their feet. Well, if you don't want to touch somebody's feet, then you probably lack humility. But if you view yourself as a worm, what won't you do that the Almighty asks you to do? Nothing too big for you, right? I think Brandon quoted Philippians 2, but let's pop over to Genesis chapter 18. We'll do a detour into that real quick. Need some tissue, man. Genesis chapter 18 and verse 18.
I read it. Since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, for I have known him so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahuwah to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahuwah brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him.
Mm-hmm.
And Yahuwah said, because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very heavy, I am going down now to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me. And if not, I know.
So one thing that you'll find, and we'll look at, we're going to do this particular study about the ways of the Almighty or the ways of Yah. He's a certain type of way. And the type of way he is he loves justice. I mean, he hates wrongdoing. He hates it. So he's like, let me see if the things I hear about Sodom. And people think Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of homosexuality. That is not why the Bible says they're destroyed. Another discourse, another conversation. We'll talk about the time. But let's keep going. Let's see what it says.
So the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, but Yahuwah still stood before Abraham. And Abraham drew near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wrong? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to act in this way, to slay the righteous with the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
so that the righteous should be as the wrong. Far be it from you. Does the judge of all the earth not do right?
Okay, keep going.
And Yahuwah said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, look, please, I who am but dust and ashes have taken it upon myself.
This dust and ashes, who is called a friend of the Almighty, majestic Creator. It's like, look, I want to reason with you, but I know I'm just dust. I'm nobody. That's the main reason we're going here. I'm nobody. So I'm nobody enough that you made all these promises to, and you could be puffed up because now you got a guaranteed shoe in. But he said, man, I'm just dust. I'm just dust. I'm nobody. So that's the point that we wanted to go on here, that worm, the second stop on our tour, you just a worm and dust. as long as we keep the fact that no matter what we accomplish or how many things we get to our credit or certifications or licenses and how many possessions we get, and like, oh, we got one car, we got 2 yachts, we got 10 houses. Just like that, remember, you can just knock your sight out. You can just send some dust in your eye and you'll never see again. And none of them possessions mean anything. So Brandon quoted it. We'll take a brief pop over to Philippians. And I won't read the whole thing because it is a lot in there. I think I've discussed it in the group. But I'll just paraphrase a part of it. And the particular part that I want, Philippians 2, and then let's look at verse 2 and 3. No, verse 3 and 4. Just look at Philippians 2 and just verse 3 and 4.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
Verse 3 and 4 says, doing none at all through selfishness or self-conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself.
Notice what it's saying. If you really, in humility, consider the next person, I think, Elder Fosher, you said this a little earlier, and I kind of popped in the room, so I caught a piece of what you were saying. Sometimes we so angry, but when the Almighty is angry with us, we want him to release his anger. Like, oh, don't be angry too long. But when we get angry at somebody else, we want to hold that anger forever. Is that justice? Is that right? But here the text is telling us, in lowliness of mind, let each esteem the other better than himself. I need to look at you as like, man, you better than me, man. And what do we mean by that? If you need something, let me look out for your interest. And if I need something, you look out for my interest. And then what it would look like in real time is, nah, man, you take the $10. No, 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 you take it. No, bro, no, no, I'm not gonna ask you again. Take it. No, 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 you take it. And now we going back and forth. Like, man, we've been talking about this $10 for an hour. And neither one of us really want to take it because we want the other one to have it. And you see, I'm exaggerating the point, but that's how you esteem the other better than yourself. And if you think of yourself as a worm, you can carry this mindset. Verse 4, did you read that?
Nope.
Yes, sir.
Verse 4, each one should look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interests of others.
What does this mean? Don't just look for your own interests, but look for the interest of others. What does this mean? Anybody have any thought on that? I mean, it may be self-explanatory. Yes, sir, Jordan.
I mean, just be simply putting others' needs before your own.
Yes, sir. Jordan. Jalen, sir.
Cool. So, when I see that, I'm seeing that when you're in whatever you're doing, consider others to the point where you're also thinking about, even if you're doing something for yourself, how can what you're doing help somebody else? Or in the midst of doing what you're doing, can you also do something to that will be in the best interest of another?
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very both good and applicable points. And I'll tell you that that is the attitude, right? Like making yourself available to support, give resources to, and not like, look, I'm gonna go do work and everybody's gonna sit at home eating bonbons and watching Netflix. No, like we both push to make sure that, like, you know, I'm concerned about the things of others. And I tell you, just kind of walking this path, I can get a phone call. Sometimes, man, I'm getting a phone call. It's 1 in the morning. Somebody need us to come to their house because the couple got into things. Walking in, there's stuff all over the place, and it's embarrassing to them. But like, yo, we need help. Hey, man. Oh, yeah, where's she at? Like, make sure, she decent. Like, yo, we all need to sit down and talk. And for me, look, I don't care if I got to go to work the next morning. This is a grave concern of mine. And that's the mindset. Because put my phone on do not disturb, and I could be getting money all the time. I don't need to be teaching on it. Like I could be getting money all the time. But when we looking on the things of others, this is the path to humility, right? And if we just worms, then this is what the Almighty asks us to do, care and love one another. All right, Job chapter 25, and I want to read this in the JPS version. Hopefully it pops up in the JPS version. Job chapter 25, and this is the Jewish Tanakh, something. I forget what it all is, but here it is. It says, Then answered Bildad the Shuhite and said, Dominion and fear are with him. He maketh peace in his high places. Is there any number to his armies? And upon whom doth his light not arise? How then can man be just with Elohim or with God? And how can one be clean that is born of a woman? Behold, even the moon has no brightness, and the stars are not pure in his sight. How much less man that is a worm, and the Son of Man that is a maggot? A maggot. Oh man, the Bible is calling us a maggot. No. Which one of us want to be called a maggot? When we think about the gravity of that, who wants to be referred to as a maggot? But this is what the text is telling us. And what is it ultimately saying? Man, just don't think too high of yourself. Get a couple of accomplishments knocked out and, get a couple of awards and maybe win a trophy or two. It's almost like, and I'll move on from this, if you watch sports or something, or even used to watch highlights, it's like the guy who shoot the ball, turn around, and walk off, and the ball is an air ball. Like, bro, okay, you good, but like, you don't got to start doing all that, my guy. You're not that good, right? So just remain humble. And I think y'all was saying in the group, a team that, oh man, we don't even got to play that hard. We're gonna beat them. And then some lower class team humble this other team. So our second stop on the path to humility is that we just a worm. That's it. Just a worm. Nothing special. Nothing special. All right. Third stop on our path to humility. Stop number 3 is teachability and receptiveness. Teachability and receptiveness. Now, practice a little bit of Kung Fu myself, right? As long as you look up the actual definition of Kung Fu, you'll see that this is true, right? Now, if you start reading into what you watched on TV, you'll be like, man, Moses, your punch ain't like whatever. So, Kung Fu, martial arts. But notice here, teachability and receptiveness, right? So about martial arts. Martial arts, the teacher is called Sifu or master. Elder Fosha, you practice martial arts?
Yes, sir.
Is this true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why do they call the teacher master?
Because of his or her knowledge, not just actually in the martial arts, but in life itself.
Yes, sir. And I talked to a master martial artist years ago, and I asked him, I said, why do people call you master? Right? Because, one could be like, oh, the Bible says call no man master, right? Different discourse, but take the guy's answer. His answer was, the teacher is teaching one how to defend and save his own life. And that person don't have the capability until they come sit under the tutelage of somebody who knows. So the teacher is teaching a person to defend and save his own life. And why is this important? Because our third stop on the path to humility is how teachable is a person? How receptive is it? Sometimes I'm talking to people and I'm like, all right, I don't think myself to be some great such and such. I don't necessarily walk around like supreme potentate of the Bible on my lapel, and I don't think all that's necessary. However, sometimes I come across people and they ask what I think about a thing, and I tell them like, no, I don't think you want to view that like that, or, yo, man, you might not want to go over there and deal with this woman like that. I think you should hold your horses, man. And they look at me like we equals. What I'm gonna say? Go do it and see what happens. But you probably want to take my advice on the matter. And anybody else who's seasoned in life, because there's safety in a multitude of counsel. So I'm not pointing to myself in general. So you might want to sit down and wait on that, right? In the old kung fu films, if you watch some of the like 80s, 90s kung fu films, a student would often beg to be connected with the training and knowledge of an esteemed teacher. Master, please teach me your style. Like, sir, I'm not taking no more students. I mean, they would sit outside his house, they would follow him around, and when you finally get a martial arts teacher who's going to teach him, they don't even start showing you kicks and punch. They're like, yo, pick up this jacket, like on, what's that movie with Jaden Smith in it? The Karate Kid too. Wax this car, go carry these buckets of water, go pick out these things. And what is they teaching them? They teaching them humility. You came thinking you're going to be doing some kicking and punching. I told you to go clean the floor. Well, I don't think I should be cleaning the floor. And you could leave my building, sir. You can leave the building. But this is what they teach in martial arts. So in the scripture, how teachable are you? Ruth chapter 1 and 16. On our third path on our stop to, or path on our stop on our path to humility. Let's look at Ruth 1 and 16. I said 13, but verse 16. Ruth 1 and 16.
I got it.
Yes,
It
sir.
says, but Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you.
So
For wherever
Naomi was saying, look, man, your husband's died, my husband died. I'm about to go back home to where I'm from. Y'all just move on about your life. And Ruth said to her, now, again, some people don't value the book of Ruth. I'm not getting into that. I value it, none of that. But Ruth said to Naomi, after she told her, girl, go home. Stop hanging out with me. Stop following me around. What did Ruth say?
she said, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever
Wherever you go, I'm gonna go. And what else?
and wherever you lodge, I will lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.
So this ideal of like teachability, and Yeshua said this when he said, look, man, y'all gonna leave me too? After all them people walked off when he told them you need to eat my flesh and drink my blood. People walked off and they said, oh, y'all gonna leave too? Notice the disciples' words. Where else are we gonna go? You have the words of eternal life. So if you're gonna exercise humility, when you come across a teacher or somebody who's gonna train you, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm just saying anybody, right? I sat under some teachers and it's like, look, I don't care if I had to be here till 3 in the morning. I need you to explain what you'd say about this text to me. I need to know. Nah, I don't think you're ready. No, 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 no. Whether I'm ready or not, could you please just tell it to me? I'm gonna go back and look it up. And I mean, it's teachers that I had that was across the country. And I'm like, sir, when you get back in town, I want to come see you. Got to take you out to lunch. Because their view of certain things was like far beyond what I was thinking. And thankfully, the Creator put me in a path to have the privilege of sitting under them to get some understanding of text. So he said, I'll follow you wherever you go. I mean, this is what Ruth was saying to Naomi. Like, so when you really got somebody who, in Ruth's case, Naomi was a mother-in-law who she was receptive to, she was teachable to, and when she told her daughter-in-law to go when we went back to Boaz, man, go lay at that man's feet and do such and such. Man, that woman got a husband because she was teachable. Everybody not teachable. And for me, and again, just as a teacher, if I perceive a person is not teachable, I don't waste much time. Don't ask, some of the things that I know could be classified as what people call esoteric knowledge. Everybody don't have this information. They can't explain to you what the depths of the Bible is talking about. So you have to be teachable. It is one of the paths to humility. Was somebody saying something? Luke chapter 9 and verse 57. If you have something to say, let me know because I'm not looking at the screen at the moment. But Luke 9 and 57, I'll just kind of paraphrase it. We don't have to read it. But this is in Luke 9. There's this text that a certain man came unto Yeshua and said, "Hey man, I'll follow you wherever you go," just like Ruth said to Naomi. And Yeshua turned around and said to him, "Look, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man have nowhere to lay his head." And if you really look at the context of what that saying is, if you're looking for security, you're not always going to be secure, right? We're going to be in some compromising position if you're trying to be with my movement, and you need to take that into consideration. And, some people just walked off from him like, "Well, I ain't trying to do all that, sir." Exodus chapter 18 and verse 21. We may skip over a couple of these. Exodus 18 and verse 21.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens.
Verse 22.
And let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you.
So this is Jethro talking to Moses. Now, Moses could have said, "Look, man, the Almighty didn't tell you to go liberate people out of Egypt. He told me. Why should I even listen to you? You, some cow farmer in the middle of the desert somewhere." But no, Jethro gave him instruction as a father-in-law and as an elder and say, "Hey, man, you shouldn't be trying to do all this by yourself. You should do it this way." And Moshe took to the instruction because part of being humble is being teachable. And sometimes, I'm just telling you, sometimes my own experience, I'm talking to somebody and I don't entertain people who talk like this to me. I just don't entertain them. But I know as much Bible as you do. This not a measuring contest. When you start getting into that, like, sir, I'm done. You got it. Whatever you think you know, you win. You got it, right? I had one guy who, when I met him, didn't know much of the Bible at all. And then he was asking me my thought on a particular topic, and I said, he was expressing his thought, and I said, "Oh, no, no, you don't want to look at it like that." And I'm trying to explain it to him. He said, "Man, you want to debate me on it?" No, 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 sir. No, sir. Without sounding pompous, that would be like a hawk and a worm. No, we're not going to debate on that. So if you kindly let me show you the couple texts, if you don't, man, move about your business, man. Maybe you'll find out the hard way when you step with somebody else with that text and it's shown that that's not what that's talking about. But no, I don't want to debate you, bro. That's not debating you is not important. So you have to be teachable. That's the point. It's the second stop on the path, or third stop on the path to, what's it, second or third? Yeah, third stop on the path to humility. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, I'll just kind of speed read that. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, it says, "Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances as I delivered them to you." So what is he saying? Man, I told you this stuff. I told you, and you need to keep these ordinances. And somebody could say, like Paul said at one point, and Shaul would say, "Look, man, who is Paul? Who is Apollos? Like, we not nobody. We just servants." But it's okay to yield to the instructions of somebody who is yielding to the instructions of who they're instructed by. This is how knowledge is cemented. This is how a person can grow. And also, if you watch people long enough, you just hang around long enough, you'll see people who group hop. You'll meet people in this group, and then they'll jump around to 6 different groups, and then they got 9 different doctrines, and they don't actually know anything firmly. They just got a bunch of so-called knowledge, and none of it have any depth or root. So here he's saying, look, man, you need to keep what I delivered to you. This is Titus chapter 3, verse 1. It says, put them in mind to be subject to principalities and powers and obey magistrates and be ready to every good work, to speak to speak evil of no man, to be no brawlers, but gentle, showing all meekness unto all men. This is an instruction. And for those who would take to an instruction, man, they teachable. For those who would not take to an instruction, man, look, if you know it all, man, I can't share nothing with you. And somebody asked me one day, they said, man, are you ever wrong? Yes, sir. I've been wrong a long time. That's how I'm in a position where I am now, where I can be right because I made my mistakes a lot. When you was out there going to, you know, Atlanta parties and Freakniks and doing home hour homecomings, my head was in this book for a long time. So I made my mistakes a long time ago. So yeah, I'm probably more correct about this than you are because, I've been doing this for a little longer. And it's okay. And it's okay to say that without sounding like I'm some grand poobah of biblical studies because I don't view myself like that. And I tried not to. I was gonna go to Mark 4, and I'll just read it really quick, but it says, for him that hath, to him shall be given, and he that hath not, from him shall be taken even that which you have. Now, of course, people who, want to take people possessions, look at this as something they're talking about, but the text is actually saying, if you're already studying the scriptures and you got your mind in that focus and you got gifts of the Ruach, then the Creator will give you more. But if you don't have nothing, like you barely know the Bible, He gonna take what you have, right? You ain't gonna know nothing at all. So if you know a little bit and you're not keeping diligent, He gonna take even that what you have. So our stop, which one was that? Teachable and receptiveness. Okay. This is actually stop number 4. I'll edit this so it doesn't say stop number 3. Oh, yeah, same thing. Teachability and receptiveness. Obviously, the text says you must come as a child. That's Matthew chapter 18. And I want to look at a couple of just quick things about a child, right? Children are naturally dependent on others for guidance and trust those who care for them. Generally speaking, a child, if you tell them anything, and I'm not suggesting you mislead a child, that's not the point, then they trust you and they believe you. They're naturally dependent on for guidance. And it's okay if you don't know to naturally depend on somebody who you still should study. I don't know, like just because somebody says it don't mean you don't go back and study. But it's okay to naturally depend on for guidance. And this is what coming as a child is about. They don't have all the answers, so they look for parents, teachers, and other caregivers with trust. Because kids they don't know. Like they just naturally most children, they just genuinely trust them. They have to be taught like different things to be apprehensive or socialized that way. Another thought about children are naturally curious and open to learning. I was looking at a study for a workshop I was doing, and it's saying that between the age of like 2 and like 5 or something before a child goes to school, they may ask uh, like 10,000 questions, and when they start going to school, they as they matriculate through the grades, they ask less and less and less questions. I can always tell who's studying by people who ask questions. If you don't ask them no questions, and some people are like, well, I don't want to be embarrassed. Well, part of humility is humiliation. And part of humiliation that children don't naturally have is they'll just ask you anything. Anything. Why is that thing on your ear? Like, son, don't ask that person that. They'll just ask anything. Children don't have no rules. They just they're curious. They're trying to learn. They ask questions and seek understanding of a world around them. They are receptive to new information and often imitate what they see in others. My wife or Isha always talks about how we're just sheep. And sheep, we just go on clusters and we just want to duplicate what we see. Children are like that. They see you exercising in the morning, they want to exercise. They see you talking loud, they want to talk loud, right? Just they're going to imitate what they see. Last part about children, generally speaking, when they're earlier age, younger children, they don't seek to be recognized or honored for their achievements. They learn out of genuine curiosity and desire to grow, not for like some reward. They just, when you have a child in front of you, they ask a lot of questions. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. Why? But why? But why? But why? They just want to know. So those are a few notes on children. Uh, Let me pause there and just see if any thoughts or questions about anything we went over so far. We're going to jump back into the presentation, but any thoughts or questions? I'm kind of plowing through. Any thoughts or questions about anything so far? All right, the path to humility. And well, I got about 10 or 12 more minutes. Jordan, go ahead.
I mean, will we still have time for like questions at the
Yeah,
end?
yeah, certainly.
Okay, I'll hold it to the end.
Okay. So in terms of the stop about that we were looking at is teachability and receptiveness. The question also would be, like when we look at the martial arts, we looked at a child, who are you being discipled under, right? Now, nobody has to answer this per se tonight, but in Ezekiel chapter 3, it says, Son of man, I set you as a watchman over Israel, right? That means that that prophet was in charge of going to tell people, hey man, you're doing this or you're doing that, and the people were supposed to respond to the prophet. And when you're walking this walk, who are you being discipled under? Have you been discipled under? Do you view discipleship as important? Because a discipleship is partially, and we'll look at a couple key elements of it, is like they're helping your growth and development in the walk. And people may argue about Matthew 28. I'm not here to fuss about it. I'm just paraphrasing what was there. But Yeshua said, or is understood to have said, for those detractors who may watch the videos and want to fuss about Matthew 28, which I'm not about to do. Go ye forth of all nations and make disciples of all men. Like, okay, well, if you're going to make people disciples, who they going to be following? They're going to be following you. When he sent you out to be fishers of men, okay. Then you got to, when you fish, you got to get them out the water. You got to clean them, gut them, scale them. You mean you got to prepare them to be meat and to be profitable. So this ideal of preparation and cleaning, I'm sure if you pull every fish out the ocean, some, yeah, man, that's unclean. Throw that back in there. Like, you can't work with that person. Some people, they're not profitable. They don't want to learn. And they'll demonstrate that, right? So they're not teachable or coachable. Titus chapter 3 and verse 1, if somebody can grab that.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
All right, Titus chapter 3, verse 1 says, Remind them to be subject to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work.
Yeah. I feel like we just read that, but yeah. Be subject to rulers and authorities. 1 Kings chapter 17 and verse 5. Now, this is the opposite of what happens when people are not subject to any rule, any authority. This is what happens when you're dealing with people who are not subject. And this First Kings, is it First Kings 17 and verse 5?
Yep, I got it.
That might not even be it. First Kings 17.
I don't think that's it.
Try Second Kings 17.
Second, look at Second Kings.
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah, that might not be it either. Oh, Judges chapter 21, 25. Sorry. I don't know how Kings got in there. Judges 21, 25.
21:25, got it.
I'll correct that in the slide.
Okay. Judges 21:25. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
And this is what happened when people are not discipled and they're not following some type of structure, or people just congregation hop, and it's like, oh, okay, man, you're just doing what's right in your own eyes. You're not accountable for anything. So a few quick things about discipleship. What we do know about discipleship is it about following? Men had followers as they followed right and proper teachings, right? People had followers as they follow right and proper teachings. So if you look at some of the old kung fu films, if you look at people like, I don't know, all these special gurus on TV who, you know, whoever they are, I can't think of all of their names, but they got people following them around to learn the new secrets to real estate. Or new people got followers. And generally, discipleship in general is about following the right and proper teachings of your teacher. And as they follow the right and proper teachings of their teacher, and it all goes back to Yeshua or Moshe or Abraham or Enoch or some righteous person that you should be following, right? The second part about discipleship is it's about learning and accountability. Every disciple was accountable to the leaders they served under. Warning, watch those who have not followed anyone or discipled under or along anyone. So if you find somebody and you meet them and like, man, don't nobody teach me, just put a check mark by them and just pay attention to them. Not saying disassociate yourself, just watch them. And they'll run a certain course of action. I've been around long enough to see it. I'm just warning you the same. Just notice them. Oh man, I don't want to be with this group or that group because ain't nobody, like, just put a check mark next to their name and just pay attention to them. And over the process of time, to see the more weird and erratic teachings that come out of them. That is my experiences. Third, discipleship involves transformation. There's no clear, sheesh. Okay, that's not edited there, but it involves transformation. So if you are going to be discipled under somebody, it will be transformation. Last stop on our tour, and then we'll close out here, the dangers of pride. So if you do not possess humility, the dangers of pride. The dangers of pride. So I'll paraphrase Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18. Solomon said, what goes before destruction?
Pride.
Yeah, pride goes before destruction. And if a person is haughty, a person is lifted up, if they think they're anything more than a worm for any significant period of time, they will be brought back to being a worm again. And generally, as Yeshua said, it's better to be humble and be abased and be lifted up than be lifted up and to be abased. Like you get to the party and like, oh yeah, I'm sitting here. Like, sir, that is not your seat. You're in the back, and now you gotta walk in the back in front of everybody. See, now if you just stood in the back, you let somebody say, hey man, come up here. We want you to sit up here at the table where all of the, whoever's up there. Isaiah chapter 13. This is one of my favorite texts in the Bible. I'm glad I was able to put this one in this particular study. Just for the sake of time, let's read verse 11. Isaiah 13 and verse 11.
Isaiah 13 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I shall punish the world for its evil. And
That
the
same world that is just a bucket of, just a drip of water and just dust and spittle in his sight. He said he's going to punish the world for their evil. And what?
and the wrong of their crookedness,
Uh-huh.
and shall put an end to the arrogance of the proud, and lay low the pride of the ruthless.
Oh yeah, those ruthless people who, whatever they doing, like, oh, I'm gonna go take over this nation and take all their resources. Oh, he gonna lay them low. He gonna cause the arrogancy of the proud ones to cease. In Exodus chapter 10, he asked the Pharaoh, how long do you refuse to be humble? And he said he gonna break the rod of his pride. He gonna break it. Break it. And what did he do? He decimated his entire economy. And that was the pride of Egypt, their economy. Their military might, and you only get military might because you robbing people of goods and water and all this other stuff. Just any other military nation, you get more resources by robbing people. That's how you have a strong military. You conquer and rob people and plunder, and that's how you get a strong military. Micah chapter 6, verse 8, and then last one will be 1 Peter 5. Micah 6, and this is the path to humility. The last up is that pride go right before the fall. So keep in mind that that's the case. Micah 6 and verse 8.
I got First Peter, and someone will get Micah.
Okay.
He has declared to you, oh man, what is good, and what does Yahuwah require of you but to do right and to love loving commitment and to walk humbly with your Elohim.
What does he require? He requiring us to be humble and to do justice or do righteousness or do right. And then last text we'll look at is 1 Peter 5 and 6.
Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. He may exalt you in due time.
So this ideal of humility, and again, there's a bunch of other texts we left out, but if you humble yourself, he will exalt you in due time. So we looked a little bit at defining humility and the value of it, some obstacles, and then we explore some of the paths to humility. What I will do all right, since I'm recording, I don't want to play this, and I was going to play that after we stop recording. So hopefully YouTube don't crash the whole video because of that clip. But what we will do is we'll stop here and then see if folks have thoughts, questions, and answers, input, whatever have you, on what we went over. And hi, Sarah. Yes, sir, Jayla.
Yeah. So, I think this was, I thought it was awesome how you walked that down. Thinking about this path to humility, but I'm also just thinking about, so, you got some Israelites, or you got some brothers out there that say that'll give you some pushback here and say, oh, well, we God's chosen people, and we this and we that. How do you reconcile, this humility piece with those people that'll come back and say that we're supposed to be the first of all the nations, and we're supposed to be this and we're supposed to be that?
I mean, one is like if you look at Isaiah chapter 58, and Isaiah 58, it talks about the stranger who does right. And it's just an interesting text because it says to the stranger who has done right and praise him, that he's going to give the stranger, like the stranger, a name better than sons and daughters. Right? He's going to give them a name better than sons and daughters. Another thought is that when you look at, and I'm paraphrasing this, I can go to the text, but another particular text that we can look at is that when you look at the book of Galatians, what Shaul is making an argument of, and many people just I don't know if there's like reading comprehension levels or context or what people said about Paul, and they mixing all this stuff up. The point that he's making in every one of his writings is that the law does not justify you. And the word justify means cleanse or clear you of guilt. The law it does not clear you of guilt. Once you break it, you are to be condemned, period. It's a list of codified rules that you should not break. It does not clear you of guilt. It doesn't. So Paul says in Galatians, when did Abraham receive the law? When he was circumcised or uncircumcised? Or when did he receive the promises? He received the promises when he was uncircumcised. So the people who were circumcised killed Yeshua. Okay? So just because you circumcised and eighth day and kept all this, does that mean anything? to the Creator? Not a
Hmm.
bit. Not a bit. It don't mean a single bit to him. Because you can't walk to him and be like, beat your chest and say, you owe me because I kept your commandments. Now give me eternal life. The law don't give you that ability. It's just a list of codes. I mean, as majestic as it is, it's just a list of rules. That's literally all it is. Nowhere in the law do it say verbatim, you're going to get eternal life when you, it don't say that verbatim. Now, you can imply that through some of it. It just don't say that verbatim.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to say, when these people beat their chest that we this and we that, bro, you're a worm and he don't have to do nothing for you. And the heavens is not clean in his sight. So what you probably should be saying, when people really understand, and I'm clearly convinced that people do not understand what it is to be Israel, because Israel was, in the truest sense of the word, experiment, a template that was supposed to be a shining light to the rest of the nations,
Hallelujah.
and not just on these laws and, you know, if you unclean and you should bathe before the sundown, that too. But they did something that no other nation was doing. They had a society that was built upon justice for people. The other societies were built upon the priest could exact 70% of your earnings. The Levite could only get 10%. The nations or the heads of government was spoiling and had feudal systems where all the land was theirs and you just lived on it and you had a marginal existence. In Israel, you couldn't even buy and sell land. It was Yah's land. So they were supposed to export this ideal of care and justice for each other, not beat their chest because you was some skin color that people parade around down. Them folks are, in my estimation, just Johnny come latelys and clowns as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they're not clear on what the real objective is. That's what I mean by that.
Hallelujah.
Anybody else want to? Oh, Brandon, you want to add on that?
Yeah, I was going to read real quick, 2 Corinthians 4, 5, for we do not proclaim ourselves, but Messiah, Yahusha the Master, and ourselves your servants for the sake of Yahusha. For Elohim, who said, let light shine out of darkness, is the one who has shone in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Elohim in the face of Yahusha Messiah. So that kind of speaks to um, we shouldn't be proclaiming ourselves. We should be humble and low. And it gets back to humility as well. So that was one passage that stuck out to me as far as if somebody wants to say, hey, we're chosen and this and that, you know, their heart posture likely is not where it needs to be.
Yeah, hallelujah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think just as importantly, something that I don't hear often enough, with all this beating on the chest on who we also are misplaced because of who we were and what we did. You know, first and foremost, we're the ones who killed Messiah. That, you know, when I didn't know that we were Israel and was under the misconception that it was the Ish, I was like, I stood in a position like, man, who would want that blood on their hands that that they killed the Christ? But it was us, you know. And while we're beating our chests, saying that we're one of the 12 tribes and this and that, and how we're going to be elevated and everybody's going to be brought beneath us. And I hear this from the street, I call them street friars. Um, I'm thinking that's not the purpose of any of it. We were supposed to be on the straight and narrow so that uh, we could be an image for the rest of the nations to lead them in righteousness. And we have a great responsibility that we failed at continuously and tried to be like them when we were supposed to make them be like us as we followed Abba Father. So um, there's very little merit, if any, if you don't have the works that fall in line with the will of Yahuwah. None, doesn't matter what title you have. Without the works, doesn't mean a thing.